can make a way. Hey, hey, so humble yourselves and pray and guard his Torah. Obey each day. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hoshiana, Hoshiana. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. How y'all doing today? Awesome. It is a warm day outside, isn't it? Oh, man, it makes me long for where we just came from. I feel like I haven't seen y'all in a long time. Now, we was just gone a week, but prior to that, we'd been gone to a trip to Destin. And, y'all, it was fun. Kids, did y'all have a good time in Destin? Yeah. Y'all saw how excited they were about that. During our trip to Destin, we had some really cool things that we'd never done before. So we decided to go and get on a boat together and go on a snorkeling adventure. And so the boat was a really cool boat. It was kind of like a really big pontoon boat, but it was fabricated different to be out in the ocean as opposed to, just being on a lake pontoon boat. But it had an enclosure on top of it so you could get underneath it. They provided all the snorkeling gear, and it was just really fun. So they took us out. And we thought we were going to go a long way. All we did was we went out and then came back around to a little jetty that was out there. Who all knows what a jetty is? You do? Okay, so not everybody does. A jetty, I had to look this up, but even though I grew up around the ocean, a jetty is a man-made thing that is meant to keep erosion from happening out in the ocean. And so you've seen them a bunch. It's these big, huge boulders that just go out and line the beach line. And the purpose of that is you'll have a channel coming in that's got a lot of current with it, and it's to keep it from washing over and just washing the beach away. So that is the purpose of a jetty. But the side note of it is that whenever you go to a jetty, fish start making it their homes. And so me, Seth, Ariel, Ashley, we had my niece with us, and even Eliab got to go get in the water over there and have a really good time. And by the way, Eliab's like 14, 15 months at this time, and he did really, really good. So we got over there, and you're able to go and just like float down beside the jetty. And we saw all kinds of fish. I got to see a crab. I'm not kidding you, this big around. And so it was really cool, but you couldn't get on the outside of the jetty because it was turbulent out there. You could see it sucking, and they had somebody sitting out there to make sure nobody got that far out. But that was something that was real fun. While we were on the boat, they took us out and... Listen, Dolphins hearts. They went and attacked the dolphins, basically. They're sitting there running them around and doing like this, but we got to see the dolphins all jumping over, and it was the first time Ariel had ever seen one in the wild. Seth, you've seen them at the ocean before, but not that close, have you?
Yeah, but we also saw sharks.
We did see sharks. So they took us to another place where there was grass underneath the water, and you can very much tell the difference between a shark and a dolphin, because a dolphin sits there and it does like this. Whereas a dolphin goes, whoa, whoa. You're right, a shark. A shark sits there and it goes, whoa, whoa, and they don't come up. And so, y'all know what that sound is from, don't you? What? Was that Jaws? I thought it was the Ewok Adventure. We did. So the next thing that happened is after they took us out and showed us the dolphins and showed us the sharks, they brought us back over to this place called Crab Island. Now, what's funny about Crab Island is it's like a beach person's southern vernacular. All right. So y'all know when we give directions, we talk about where Piggly Wiggly used to be. Well, Crab Island used to be an island. It's not there anymore. What happened was they had a hurricane come along and it washed Crab Island away. But the water there is still very shallow. You can go and park your boat, jump out, and you're in waist deep water out there. And it's just beautiful and blue and clear. And people go out there and just have the greatest time. They pulled us across the water from where Crab Island is, and they let us get over there and go shelling. And y'all, I actually suspect that the company just goes out there and throws shells out there for us to find. I'm not so sure, but we found some amazing shells. I found this one that was stretched out, looked like it ought to be on top of a unicorn. There were some that were like this that looked like they should have been a snail inside of it. We found little sand dollars. We found all kinds of stuff, and they're right. We found hermit crabs and even had a hermit crab rice. So that was a whole lot of fun. While we were there, though, how many of y'all know about beach flags? Do you? So The Coast Guard goes around, or the lifeguards do too, and they have a signal that's out in front of the ocean that lets you know what the conditions of the ocean are like. All right, so the very first flag is a purple flag. And what a purple flag means is that there's dangerous marine life in the water. And so dangerous is kind of in the eye of the beholder, because that can mean something as little as these little jellyfish that kind of just like annoy you, or it could be a manta ray, which could kill you. There could also be stingrays, so you have to use caution whenever you see a purple flag. The next flag is a green flag. And what green means? Green means good. Green means beautiful. Green means calm and just serene and wonderful. We didn't get a whole lot of green flags while we were there. Yellow flag, however, is a medium to moderate surf. This means that you've got a lot of current that you've got to be careful of. So you can still go out there and play. You can do things like body surfing and things like that, but at the end of the day, you've got to be very careful, because it can be kind of strenuous out there. It can also mean something can suck you out and you get in a riptide. So you have to be very careful during a yellow flag. Red flag means high hazard, don't get in the water. And then there's another one called double red, which means the beach is totally closed. So you have to watch that whenever you come up. Now, we only got one wonderful, beautiful day where there was a green flag. And y'all, they call it the Emerald Coast. So we got a green flag and got to see the Emerald Coast, because it was just beautiful and green and blue. It was actually on a Sabbath day. And we got to go over to Navarre Beach, and we met up with Hezekiah and my brothers Derek. Both of them are my brothers. And we just had the best time. Didn't we, Seth? We got out there and got snorkeling, because I have my own snorkeling gear. And man, for me, when I get out and get in the water, I like snorkeling, I like scuba diving, I like just being in the ocean, period. There's something very spiritual about being there. I've got all this, my head goes 90 miles an hour. And so when I'm in the water, it blocks out everything. All I can hear is my breath. And so I can sit there and watch all these wonderful creatures that Yahweh sit there and fashioned, and watch them doing whatever they're doing in their brilliant colors and just having their own lives. And I sit there and I bless Yahweh deep inside my soul, because he did this. He had this creativity to be able to do that. But, I forgot to tell y'all this too. On that day, I saw something. Now, I'm not sure what it was. It was one of two things. I was out there floating, and I saw these two eyes sticking up out of the water. They were on top, and I saw this tail coming out. You got any idea what that might be? It was either a ray or it was a horseshoe crab. And I got all excited and popped out of the water and said, I found something. About that time, a wave pulled me over, and then another one right behind it, and I jumped back in, and I couldn't get back over to find out which one it was. But either way, do y'all know what a horseshoe crab is? You know what they are? They look prehistoric. It almost looks like some kind of like World War II helmet sitting there with eyeballs on top of it and a tail that sticks out of it. And when you flip it over, it's this little thing going like that, trying to get away from you. Why did Yahweh make that? I don't know, but it's still, that goes to what his imagination is, and so he's just amazing. So what? So you did that during a sermon. That's exactly what it's like. In a sermon. So all the other days we had yellow flags, which means it was pretty strenuous, less spiritual, more strenuous. We did things like body surfing. Have y'all ever done body surfing before? Oh, it's fun. I love body surfing. Unless it's like those killer days. But you get there and you wait for the wave to suck you in, and you just go as hard as you can and you come on in. The other thing that we had to spend a lot of time was, instead of just relaxing, we're sitting there jumping waves. Well, the kids got a hold of that pretty well, except for one day we got these really big waves coming through. And I had one come over and just smack me and about knock me down. And I was worried about them, but they did all right. But the day that hit me, it made me kind of jog my memory, if you will. It made me start thinking about two things. One was a time that a buddy of mine had a big adventure that I'd like to tell you about. But the other one is going to be the premise of what the sermon is, which is called Kiss the Wave. So if you don't mind, let me introduce to you the idea of what Kiss the Wave is, and then we'll come back to the story about me and Taylor when we got stuck. All right, so Kiss the Wave. Kiss the Wave comes from a book called Win the Day, 7 Daily Habits to Help You Stress Less and Accomplish More. Looks like this. It's by a preacher out of D.C. His name's Mark Batterson. And if you've never heard of him, go check him out. So what I love about Mark is that he writes some real inspirational things that have biblical basis. All right, and so that's not something that we get a whole lot of. And he goes from all over. I mean, the stories and things that he puts together are just awesome. But this particular book is about 7 habits that will help you to be able to have a better life. And I'll summarize the 7 different habits for you real quick. The first one is called Flip the Script. And he's got a little tagline on the back side of it that says, if you want to change your life, start by changing your story. And so what he says is that, you know, what you think your story is doesn't have to be that. You can change it in an instant and live something else. You get to decide what your story is. So that's a pretty cool thing. Number 2, which we're going to talk about today, is called Kiss the Wave. And the little tagline on it is, the obstacle is not the enemy, the obstacle is the way. More on that in a minute. Eat the Frog is number 3. If you want Yahweh to do the super, you got to do the natural. Now, I really wished he'd have picked something beside a frog. You know, we need something clean there. But either way, what that's talking about is, in order for supernatural things to happen, we as Yahweh servants have to go out and do the mundane things every day to let it add up so that he can use us. We can't be ready to go do something really strenuous if we haven't been over there working our bodies, as a for instance. All right, fly the kite. How you do anything is how you do everything. It's got a pretty cool story along with it. Next one is cut the rope, and he says playing it safe is a little risky. Number 6 is wind the clock. I like this one a lot. Time is measured in minutes. Life is measured in moments. And that's deep. All right? And the final one is seed the clouds. Sow today what you want to see tomorrow. All right, so back to Kiss the Wave. The premise behind Kiss the Wave is that obstacles and the trials that we go through in life aren't necessarily bad. They may feel bad as we're going through them. They may be very painful. It may be hurtful. And it may last for a long time. But that whole thing doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. Instead, it's what molds us into who we are today. And if we learn to embrace that, it can really change the trajectory of our lives. Now, obstacles come in all shapes and sizes, like the one that me and Taylor experienced when we were 16 years old. So I got blessed. I grew up around the ocean. We lived down on St. Simon's Island all the way through high school. And I got to ride my bike all the way all over that island. I got to go down to the pier just about any time I wanted to. We fished for sharks. We caught rays. We caught eels. I've been up and close with alligators plenty of times. And so we just had, a very, very big adventure the whole time we was there. Well, me and Taylor decided one day that we were going to go kayaking. And I didn't have a kayak. Taylor had one, and then he had another one that he borrowed. So Taylor, the ones they use in the ocean aren't those little bitty ones like we see when we're up at the Ocoee. They're more of a long one. But they have the skirt that you can strap in and flip over if you want to, and they're real good. But the one that Taylor procured for me was not that way. It might as well have just been a floating seat. It was an open kayak. And so my legs were out there and everything, and I was just floating along. But we decided that we were going to go over to the East Beach Causeway and get on there and float out to the ocean over at Gould's Inlet. And we were going to take, I always forget the name of it, Postel Creek. And Postel Creek was a tidal creek. And so what we decided to do was we were going to go hit it while the tide was going out, thinking that would help us get out there quicker. All right? So we put in, and we were having a blast, y'all. We were sitting there. We were seeing all kinds of animals. We were seeing the cranes. We were seeing herons. We were seeing pelicans. We were seeing seagulls, which you always see when you're at the beach. But we started seeing all kinds of different turtles. We saw some snakes over here. And as we were going along, I vividly remember looking over here, and these people had this really cool, not a deck, what do you call it? Not a barge, not a pier. What do you call it where you put your boat? Thank you. A dock. My brain went somewhere else. They had this really cool dock, but it was one of those that had to float to keep up with the tide. And we were going by it, and it looked like it was low. And as we turned our head to the left, we could see down through the marsh grass and start seeing the mud. And right there was an alligator sunning himself. And I'm not talking about one of those little ones that you hold when you go to one of those exhibition things. I'm talking about a sure enough, you bet you, alligator was sitting over there. And so me and Taylor started just easing on past that thing, and it didn't bother us and we didn't bother it. But that should have been an indicator right there that something was wrong for us. You see, me and Taylor knew how far it was from where we put in over to the ocean. What we didn't know is that Postel Creek didn't go like this to the ocean. Instead, it did like that. So our little trip was starting to take us a lot longer than what we realized. Before long, I'm sitting there paddling. All of a sudden, I heard, I said, uh-oh. got over. But then in a second, we were bottoming out. We were bottoming out in the middle of the marsh, and we were bottoming out on the top of oyster beds. Oh, no. So there we are, me and Taylor, 16 years old, out in the middle of nowhere, a bottle of water between the two of us, and it's a beautiful day, but it's still a sunny day in Georgia, and so it's hot. Kids have some big adventures, don't we? Now, we weren't just unprepared, you know. We thought we were doing right because, I don't know if you know this or not, but in Georgia, at least down on St. Simon's Island, we have 7-foot tides, right? 7 foot does not mean from here out that way, which is what we experienced while we were in Destin, Florida. 7 foot on Georgia means 7 foot from here up. That's 7 feet in depth. It goes down and up 7 feet. And that can be as much as a football field out when you get out there on East Beach. So it is a long ways out. And so we thought we had plenty of time, but when I said, I knew we were in trouble. So me and Taylor brainstormed on what we were going to do, and so we decided we were going to hop up and try to go it gondolier style. So we're up there with our paddles going, it was a long and arduous trip to get to where we could finally get to water. But we did. I always think about that and think, you know, me and Taylor were doing paddle boarding before paddle boarding was cool. But we finally did. We got to a spot where all of a sudden I went, shh, and my boat slid a little bit. And I said, oh. And I did it again. And I said, yes. And I sat down, and we still weren't there. So I stood back up, and then finally it broke loose, and we got into some deeper water. And we were able to paddle out. Now, when you get to Goals Inlet, you have to be careful because there's a pretty big channel right there, and the waters are pretty tough. So what we had to do was we wanted to get over to East Beach. We had to paddle out and around the big sandbar and then come back in from this side in order to make sure that we were in safe waters to be able to get out. Now, as we approached the beach, I was like, thank you, Yahweh. I'm so glad. But then I decided I was going to do something. So we were having some little bit of waves in between the two sandbars right there. And I thought to myself, I'm going to surf me a wave. So one of them started coming up behind me, and I started paddling, and I took off into it. Now, I was not a surfer. Now, I had pictures of Surfing Magazine on my wall at home because it was really cool, but I'd never done it. I'd watched it on TV. I'd watched how the guys got up there and they'd go and they'd jump up on their board and then they'd immediately cut in and they'd start going down this side of the wave. And you'd even see the wave crest over top of them and it'd just be beautiful. And they'd sit there and they'd hit their hand on the back of it and just go out of it. They call that getting barreled is what they call it. And I thought, I'm going to cut this wave. So I got in there, I took and I turned, and I almost knew immediately I'd messed up. That thing took me and turned me, and I just was going in a different direction than I had planned in. Y'all, I remember it to this day. I didn't have any control, something more powerful than me that was pushing me, and I was underwater. I really was. I was getting barrel rolled as opposed to just getting barreled, and it all culminated with a big bam on the bottom of the ground, and I got a face full of sand. But I stood up and I was like, and I grabbed that boat just in case because I didn't want it hitting me again. And we got out of it. And have you ever felt that way before? Not a face full of sand, but have you ever felt like no matter what you did, you were not in control? That something was pushing you and pushing you hard. And no matter what you could do, you were going with it because there was nothing else. This is the premise of where Kiss the Wave comes from. So the whole quote comes from a guy whose name is Charles Spurgeon. He was a Baptist preacher at one point in time that went around and was, what do they call it, an evangelist? And he went around and did all these big sermons. But the quote that he had was, I have learned to kiss the waves that throw me against the rock of ages. And y'all, I'm sure y'all have heard of where the rock of ages comes from. It's out of Isaiah 26:4. It says, trust in Yahweh forever. For in Yahweh is the rock of ages. When he was talking about the waves that would push him in different directions, he was talking about the obstacles and the different trials that we go through in life that make us go in a direction that we weren't planning on. And they push hard. They push real hard. And no matter what kind of fight you do to try to get out of it, it's still bigger and stronger than you are. Our waves can be all kinds of different things. They can be things like birth defects. You know, we don't plan on that. That's a pretty big wave that can change the trajectory of your life. Because I'm going to tell you, my trajectory on that wave was I was going that way. The wave decided I was going that way. Learning disorders. That's a wave that you're not expecting that can change the trajectory of your life. Sudden job loss. You know, not ones where people retire. But sudden job loss can be a pretty big wave that can push you in a different direction. That can lead to other things like foreclosure and bankruptcy. You know, a divorce can be a type of wave that can send you in a different direction than what you were expecting. Chronic debilitating diseases. These can be things that can move you and you weren't even expecting it, didn't do anything to ask for it. Cancer. Oh man, cancer. That can change your trajectory. It could be the loss of a loved one. It could be a spouse. It could be a child. It could be the loss of a limb. It could be all kinds of things that could be these waves that change the trajectory of where you're going and that push you no matter what you do to be able to fight them. I would submit to you even parenting can be a wave. And your choice is you have to decide what you're going to do when that wave is upon you. There's basically 3 different things that you can do. Because I'm going to tell you, when those waves hit you, it hurts. Now, when that wave hit me, I got the face full of sand, but the stuff that you're going through can hit you in all kinds of different ways. It can hit you spiritually, it can hit you emotionally, it can be physically. And so when it hurts, you can do nothing, you can clam up, you can get depressed. That's one way people handle it. The next way they can do it is when you get hurt, all of a sudden you decide you're going to fight back. You're going to do everything. You're just going to get rough. This oftentimes leads to bitterness. It leads to blaming others, up to and including Yahweh. It's not a very good way to handle it, I don't think. The third way, which is the way that the book suggests, is that when you get hurt, you learn from it. When you're able to get in that wave and get pushed in it and you accept it and you learn to learn from it, this leads to growth and can even make you have a closer walk with Yahweh. This is what kissing the wave is. Now, something I want to say before I get too far into this is that kissing the wave does not mean that the hurt is over. It is not meant to, the premise of it is not meant to demean the hurt. It's not meant to invalidate the hurt. It's not even meant to minimize the hurt. The hurt is the hurt. It is what it is. And Yahweh said there's a time to grieve. There's a time to go through all that. And you are going to feel it. It's going to happen. This is not meant to minimize your pain. And I want you to know, even when this wave is upon you, you have a loving Father that is with you, that will not leave you, that will not forsake you, and is here to help you through that wave and to get you into a position that He wanted you to get into. And I don't want y'all to take my word for it. I'd like for you to take the Scripture's word for it. So if you don't mind, let's turn to Deuteronomy 31. It's going to be on page 218. We're going to be in one verse. I'm sorry, we're going to be on page 219. It's going to be 31:8. And it is Yahweh who is going before you. He Himself is with you. He does not fail you nor forsake you. Do not fear nor be discouraged. Let's check out another one. Let's go to Psalms 94:14. I said 19, it's 14. Psalms 94:14, we're going to be on page 699. Just one verse. Psalms 94:14, for Yahweh does not leave His people, nor does He forsake His inheritance. Let's go to Isaiah 35. That's going to be on page 439. I like this one. Isaiah 35, we're going to go verses 3 through 10. The very beginning of this lets me know that people are going through a wave. Strengthen the weak hands and make firm the weak knees. Say to those with an anxious heart, be strong, do not fear. See, your Elohim comes with vengeance, with the recompense of Elohim. He is coming to save you. He's coming to save you. It's like a lifeguard or something. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf be opened. Then the lame shall leap like a deer, and the tongue of the dumb sing, because waters shall burst forth in the wilderness, and streams in the desert. And the parched ground shall become a pool, and thirsty land springs of water. In the home of jackals, where each lay, grass with reeds and rushes. And there shall be a highway and a way, and it shall be called the way of set apartness. The unclean does not pass over it, but it is for those who walk the way, and no fool wanders in it. No lion is there, nor any ravenous beast go up on it. It is not found there, but the redeemed shall walk there. And the ransom of Yahweh shall return, and enter Zion with singing, with everlasting joy on their heads. They shall obtain joy and gladness, and sorrow and singing shall flee away. This is what happens when you let that rock push you towards the rock of ages. Let's go to Isaiah 43, a couple pages over. And we're going to read 1 through 7. But now, thus said Yahweh, your Creator, O Yaakov, and he who formed you, O Yisrael, do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by your name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, the wave, I am with you. And through rivers, they do not overflow you. When you walk through fire, that sounds like a trial, doesn't it? You are not scorched, and a flame does not burn you. For I am Yahweh, your Elohim, the set apart one of Israel, your Savior. I gave Mitzrayim for your ransom, Cush and Sabah in your place. Since you were precious in my eyes, you have been esteemed, and I have loved you. He loves you, y'all. And I give men in your place and peoples for your life. Do not fear, for I am with you. I shall bring your seed from the east and gather you from the west. I shall say to the north, give them up, and to the south, do not keep them back. Bring my sons from afar and my daughters from the ends of the earth. All those who are called by my name, who I have created, formed, even made for my esteem. Yahweh is with us, and he does not forsake us. When you're going through these waves, y'all, he will be with you. He will protect you. I promise you it will still hurt. There will still be experiences associated with that. But Yahweh's going to use those things to be able to make you better. And the last one that I'd be remiss if I didn't put it in there, Proverbs 3. It's on page 729, and we're going to be Proverbs 3, 5 through 8. Trust in Yahweh with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. Know him in all your ways, and he makes all your paths straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. You know, when you're trying to make yourself go through the wave in your own direction. Fear Yahweh and turn away from evil. And Dad always points out that this word right here, evil, doesn't mean satanic. It means bad stuff, like things that might be a wave. When you do that, it's healing to you. It's healing to your navel and moistening to your bones, because now you can rely on Yahweh to push you in the right direction and at least have some sort of peace with that. But even with all that, it's going to hurt and may continue to hurt. It can hurt for a long time. It may get numb or desensitized after a while, and the next thing you know, you go along and you knock it on something like an anniversary or a birthday where you remember, and it just opens that wound back up. You can have a great day out there, just energetic as all get out, and you realize the next day that you went too hard at it, and you're in the bed for 2 weeks thereafter. You could be having a great time with family, but you wind up having to sit on the sidelines because everybody went to the park, and you've got to sit in your wheelchair now, and you're not able to do what it is everybody else is able to do. But through that pain, through that wave, let it push you. And just know it will mold you into the person that Yahweh wants you to be. That person can be somebody that makes a difference for him, somebody that can be used for him, somebody that can do great things for his purpose and for his esteem. That is what the essence of Kiss the Wave is all about. Taking that pain and letting it move you to become a better person and a better servant of Yahweh. Now, we've talked a whole bunch of things, and I'd like to be able to go and look at some stories from the scriptures where people had opportunity to go through a big wave and then come out better on the other side. They kissed the wave. Now, I've preached on this before, and the sermon was what to do in adversity, but Joseph's story is one of the best for this. So if y'all don't mind, let's turn over to Genesis 37. We're going to start in verse 2, so that's going to be on page 39, but then we're going to flip over real quick. So Joseph went through a wave. He went through a tidal wave almost, because his started very early and it lasted a long time. In verse 2 we read, this is the genealogy of Yaakov. Joseph was 17 years old when his wave started. He started at 17. And y'all, he may have asked for some of it, but dude, he got violated in a lot of different ways. He had brothers that legitimately hated him and wanted to murder him. He had his family being jealous of him. He had all kinds of things. Let's look at verse 8. And his brother said to him, shall you indeed rule over us? Shall you indeed rule over us? I mean, they had to say it twice. So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. They weren't able to speak peaceably to him. Now, I don't know between verses 11 and 12 if yours has this, but in my eSword, it said there was a little heading right there that said, Joseph sold by his brothers. Y'all imagine the feeling that could be to know your family, your own flesh and blood, decided that they hated you so much that they were going to turn you away for silver and laugh about it. Let's go to verse 18. And they saw him from a distance, the brothers seeing Joseph from a distance, and before he came near, they plotted against him to kill him. And they said to each other, see, this master of dreams is coming. Now then, come, let us now kill him and throw him into some pit and shall say, some wild beast has devoured him. Let us then see what comes of his dreams. But Reuben heard and rescued him from their hands, said, don't do that. Don't take his life. He said, don't shed blood. Throw him into that pit, and that's cool, but just don't lay a hand on him. I'm paraphrasing now. In order to rescue him from their hands. So it came to be when Joseph came to his brothers that they stripped off Joseph's robe and they threw him into the pit. It was an empty pit, and there was no water down in it. And his brothers said to themselves, you know what? What are we going to gain off of this if Joseph just dies? Well, I got a better idea, said Yehuda. He said, what if we go over there and we sell him to those guys? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let our hand be upon him. For let our hand not be upon him, for he's our brother, and he's our flesh. And his brothers listened. And men, Midianite traders, passed by, so they pulled Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit. I bet when that was happening, he was thinking, all right, it's over, we're good. They're pulling me up. But then whenever they handed him over, can you imagine the betrayal that went through him? That's one heck of a wave, y'all. That's one heck of a wave. And he's getting pushed in a direction that he's got no control over. They sold him for 20 pieces of silver, and they took Joseph to Mitzrayim. Joseph was just sold. You know, in our day and age, we call that human trafficking. It's a real thing. So not only has he been ostracized by his family, almost murdered on purpose, and now he's a victim of human trafficking. This is a bad start to a 17-year-old boy. That's a pretty big wave. Now, we know what happens next. He goes down and he lives with Potiphar. And things seem to be good. Yahweh's blessing him. And then we got the whole ordeal with Potiphar's wife and the false accusations associated with that lands Joseph into the dungeon, he called it. All right, so we got ostracized. We got almost murder. We've got human trafficking. Now he's in a dungeon. Can you imagine the despair that could be inside of him? What would you do in that situation with those waves? You know, we got three choices. Fight back, we can just let it be and get depressed, or we can learn from it. I think Joseph started learning from it because he continued to be prosperous and he continued to have a fairly positive outlook with him. But the whole time that this was going on, he would still maintain his innocence about what was this. And he knew that what was being pushed against him was not of his own doing. So when those waves come on you, it doesn't necessarily mean you caused it. It can be from something else. It may be from Hashatan, or it may be Yahweh's pushing you in a different direction. So just because it's happening doesn't mean that you did something. Now, it very well may be that you did something, but sometimes it's not. Anyway, the cupbearer and the chief baker come in there, and they both have the dreams, and we know what happens with that. He interprets it. And in Genesis 40:14, after he gets through interpreting it, he pleads with them, and he says, "But remember me when it is well with you, and please show kindness to me, and mention me to Pharaoh, and get me out of this house. For truly I was stolen away from the land of the Hebrews, and I have done naught that I should be put in this dungeon." He's done nothing. So as this wave was tossing him around, wouldn't it be easy to get hurt and just blame people? I mean, wouldn't it be easy to blame Yahweh in this? I mean, what are you doing? Why are you letting this happen to me? What did I do to you? Wouldn't that be easy? If you're down in the dungeon, it'd be easy. Just get depressed and sit over there and just wither away. Depression can consume you, so be careful of that. Moving on. He gets to stand before Pharaoh, but it takes 2 years more after that. And finally, he gets some relief. But y'all, the relief of getting brought out of the dungeon and becoming second in command was 13 years of riding that wave. He was 17 years old whenever he got brought out, and he's 30 before he's standing in front of Pharaoh. 13 years of being a slave when he'd been in a pretty wealthy family. That's a pretty big wave. Something else that's something to note is that by the time his brothers get there, if he wanted to blame somebody, there'd be some good ones to blame. There'd be some good ones to build some resentments up towards, and I'm not sure that he didn't. But there were 7 more years of plenty after that, so that gets us to 20, and by the time they come and he reveals himself, he said there's been 2 years of scarcity of food and 5 years left. So we're either in the 22nd or 23rd year at that point in time, which means that's nearly a quarter of a century for this to fester in his mind. That'd be a lot of time to build up a resentment and come up with some kind of game plan for revenge. Well, let's look at it. Genesis 42:1. Only a couple pages over. Y'all flip faster than I do. 42:1. And when Yaakov saw that there was grain in Mitzrayim, Yaakov said to his sons, "Why do you look at each other?" And he said, "See, I've heard that there is grain in Mitzrayim. Go down to that place and buy for us there, and let us live and not die." And Joseph's 10 brothers went down to buy grain in Mitzrayim. But Yaakov did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he said, "Lest some harm come to him." And the sons of Israel went to buy grain among those who journeyed, for the scarcity of food was in the land of Canaan. And Joseph was governor of the land, over the land. He was the one who sold to all the people of the land, and Joseph's brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the earth. And Joseph saw his brothers, and he recognized them. What do you think went through his mind when he saw them? Think all those feelings welled up inside of him? I mean, it wouldn't. I don't know of anybody that could just be like, "Hey," But he acted as a stranger to them and spoke to them harshly. That's one of the reasons why I think it might be he had resentments coming out. And he said to them, "Where do you come from?" And they said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food." So Joseph recognized his brothers, but they didn't recognize him. And Joseph remembered the dreams which he had dreamed about them and said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land." And they immediately got defensive, and they said to him, "No, my master, but your servants have come to buy food. We are all one man's sons. We are trustworthy." Can y'all imagine them saying that and what that started? "I'll show you some trustworthy. Your servants are not spies." But he had said to them, "No, but you have come to see the nakedness of the land." And they said, "Your servants are 12 brothers, the son of one man in the land of Canaan. And see, the youngest is our father today, and one is no more." You mean to tell me you're going to bring it up in front of me? And Joseph said to them, "It is as I have spoken to you, saying, you are spies. By this you shall be proven by the life of Pharaoh. You do not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you and let him bring your brother, while you are kept in prison. So let your words be proven to see whether there is any truth in you, or else by the life of Pharaoh, you are spies. And he put them all together in prison for 3 days. Now, I'm not sure what was going on there. I'm not sure if that's him exacting some revenge. I don't know if he's so overcome with emotion right now, he's got to think about what to do. But they got to go take a ride down to the pokey. And so I'm sure that was fun. And so they put him in prison for 3 days. Now, on the third day, Joseph comes back out. We're in verse 18. And he said to them, do this and live, for I fear Elohim. If you are trustworthy, because I'm not sure you aren't, because I know stuff about y'all don't know I know about you. But if you are trustworthy, let one of your brothers be confined to your prison house, and you go bring grain for the scarcity of food in your houses. And bring your youngest brother to me, and let your words be confirmed, and you do not die. And so they did. And they said to each other, truly we are guilty concerning our brother, for we saw the distress of his life when he pleaded with us. All right, so now we got confirmation of what was happening while he's being let off, while he's being sold. He was pleading with the stress of his life in his eyes. Yet we did not listen. That is why this distress has come upon us. And Reuben answered them, said, didn't I tell you? Said, don't sin against the boy. But you wouldn't listen. And see, his blood's now required of us. But they didn't know Joseph was listening. Matter of fact, he had to look this way and that way, and he took off running. And he had to cry. Now, I don't know what the cry was. Oftentimes when I think about it, I think it was just being overcome with emotion. But was that emotion sadness? Or could it have been rage? What did they do to me? Either way, this wave has pushed them down a long ways, and there's a lot of pain right here, right now. So he decides to play a little game with them, cat and mouse. But when he finally comes to their senses, verse 45, 3, they come back. And chapter 45, verse 3, I'm sorry. Let me flip over there real quick. Joseph said to his brother, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? Can y'all imagine the look on the brothers' faces? See, they've been going through a wave too. Their wave was just different. But his brothers were unable to answer him, for they trembled before him. Then Joseph said to his brothers, please come near to me. And when they came near, he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Mitzrayim. And now, do not be grieved or displeased with yourself because you sold me here. For Elohim sent me before you to preserve life. For 2 years now, the scarcity of food has been on the land, and there are still 5 years in which there is neither plowing nor harvesting. And Elohim sent me here before you to preserve you for a remnant in the earth, and to give life and great escape. So then, you did not send me here, but Elohim. And he has sent me for a father to Pharaoh, a master of all his house, and a ruler throughout the land of Mitzrayim. That is kissing the wave. That is realizing that all this stuff that's been pushing you in a different direction, all this stuff that you thought hurt, that you felt hurt, a quarter of a century nearly of this going on. And Joseph had the clarity to be able to see. That wasn't from Satan. That wasn't from my brothers. They're the ones that did it, and it hurt. But Yahweh used it for good. Kiss the wave that brings you to the Rock of Ages. Now, that's a good story, but let's talk about another story that the wave pushed somebody from a lowly position all the way to second in command. And instead of becoming bitter, she kissed the wave, rose to second in command, and saved her people. We're going to turn over to Esther. We're going to read about little Hadassah. I'm going to apologize because I have a really hard time with the right name for Xerxes. I don't know why. There's just some words that are really hard to pronounce. And Ahasuerus is one of them. That ain't even right. I don't even know. I sat there and I poured over this trying to make sure I can get it right for you. So it is what it is. Y'all have some mercy on me. All right. Esther, we're going to be in chapter 2. We're going to start in verse 1. After these events, when the wrath of sovereign Ahasuerus had ceased, he remembered Vashti, what she had done, and what the decree had been against her. So if y'all don't remember, what happened is that there was this big party going on, and the king was out there, and all the viceroys and everybody, and the governors and everybody else was out there, and they said, dude, bring the queen out. And he said, heck yeah, let's bring the queen out. And so they said, hey, queen, get down here. She said, I ain't doing it. He said, yes, you are. She said, I ain't doing it. And she didn't. This is the Southern version. So, this ain't the Griffith version. I popped up and said, I'm right here. But anyway, so Queen Vashti said she wasn't going to do it. And it made the king look bad, because over here in Persia, what the king says is law, and it happens. And if it don't happen, death often happens. Now, Vashti didn't die. Instead, he said, fine, you ain't the queen no more. And she was no longer allowed to come into the palace. She got put off wherever she got put off. And so he had to do that because it was the law, but it affected the king. Here's how we know. He remembered all that and what had been done, decreed against him. Then the sovereign's servants who attended him said, let lovely young maidens be sought for the sovereign. So he's obviously been down, so they're trying to make him feel better. Verse 3, and let the sovereign appoint officers in all the provinces of his reign, and let them gather all the lovely young maidens to the citadel of Shushan, into the women's quarters under the hand of Hegai, the sovereign's eunuch, guardian of the women, to give their preparations. Say, what? Did y'all hear the words that were just used there? They're going to salt all the women, and then they're going to gather all the women. This sounds a lot like human trafficking today. However, I think it may be a different type of trafficking than what Joseph experienced. We'll get into that in a second. And let the young woman who pleases the sovereign, be sovereigness instead of Vashti. And the word pleased the sovereign, and he did so. See what I mean? That sounds like a little bit different gathering in human trafficking. Verse 5, in the citadel of Shushan there was a certain man, a Yehudite, whose name was Mordecai, son of Yair, son of Shimei, son of Kish, a Benjamite, who had been exiled from Jerusalem with the captives who had been exiled with Yechoniah, I have a hard time with that one too, Yechoniah, sovereign of Yehuda, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the sovereign of Babel, had exiled. And it came to be that he was raising Hadassah, that is, Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother. The young woman was lovely and of good appearance, and when her father and mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter. So Esther's riding her own little wave, isn't she? All right? She's an orphan. Right? I don't know how she became an orphan. It doesn't say how she was an orphan. But Mordecai was actually in Jerusalem whenever the exile happened. Is it plausible that her mama and daddy might have gotten killed during one of the sieges? All right? It could be that. They could have died along the way due to disease. There's no telling what happened. All I know is that poor little Hadassah is sitting in town being raised by a cousin instead of her mama and daddy. And it's just a boy that's taking care of her too. Notice it didn't say Mordecai and his wife. It said Mordecai. So she's not having the influence of a woman to be able to give her the graces. That's not the right word. What's the right word for that? We'll go with graces. The graces that go along with the way women are supposed to be, the prettiness, the etiquette. She's got a guy that's a governor over there trying to tell her what to do. And guys don't speak girls real well. That's the reason why there's lots of books on it. And we still don't get it. So, she's an orphan. Now something's about to happen to her. Verse 8. And it came to be when the sovereign's command and decree were heard, and when many young women were gathered at the citadel of Shushan, I'm sure they all said, we're going to come of our own volition or else we'll get our heads chopped off. All right, that was not written. Into the hand of Hegai, that Esther too was taken. There's a movie called that's about this. To sovereign's palace, into the hand of Hegai, guardian of the women. All right, so now, not only is she in a foreign land, she's been orphaned, raised by a relative that, like we said, is only a guy, not a girl. And now she has been gathered to be brought to the king. She was taken. That's a pretty big wave, wouldn't you say? Verse 9. I mean, can you imagine what's she going to do? She can't run from this. She can't run. She can't exact any of her own energy to be able to get on her own path. This is pushing her whether she wants to or not. She is helpless in this. All she can do is ride the wave. And the young woman pleased him, being Hegai, and she received kindness from him. So he hastened to give her preparation and for her portions, and gave her 7 choice female servants from the sovereign's palace. And he moved her and her female servants to the best place in the house of the women. Esther had not made known her people or her relatives, for Mordecai had commanded her not to do it. And every day Mordecai walked by the front gate just to check on her, see how she's doing, making sure she was alive, and to learn what was going on with her. Verse 12. Now, when the turn of each young woman came to go into the sovereign YHWH, I'll stop laughing, after she had completed 12 months according to the regulations for the women, for the days of their preparation were completed as follows: 6 months with oil and myrrh, and 6 months with the perfumers, and with the preparation of the women. That's an entire year of sitting there waiting in captivity. Now, this sounds like some luxury captivity, but at the end of the day, you're still captive, can't leave, can't do what you want to. All right? This is still being taken. Thus prepared, the young woman went to the sovereign, and whatever she asked for was given to take with her from the house of the women to the sovereign's palace. This is an interesting verse. I didn't realize this until me and Dad was talking today. In the evening she went, and in the morning she returned to the second house of the women, into the hand of Shaashgaz, the sovereign's eunuch, guardian of the concubines. I want you to notice that they went in as maidens and they came out as something different. This is a different kind of trafficking, isn't it? She would not come into the sovereign again unless the sovereign delighted in her and called for her by name. Verse 15. That's a wave, y'all. And to know it's coming, and to know it's coming. And when the turn came for Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her as his daughter, to come into the sovereign, she sought no matter but what Haggai, the sovereign of the eunuchs, guardian of the women, advised. But Esther found favor in the eyes of all who saw her. And Esther was taken to sovereign Ahasuerus into his royal palace in the 10th month, which is in the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. And the sovereign loved Esther more than all the women, and she found favor and kindness in his eyes more than all the maidens. And he set the royal crown upon her head and made her sovereigness instead of Vashti. And the sovereign made a great feast, the feast of Esther, for all his officials and servants. And he proclaimed a release in the province and gave gifts according to the means of the sovereign. Now, this sounds like a happy ending for what could have been a horrible ending. I mean, she could have been out there in the second house. And now she's got nowhere else to go other than live, and you're done. No more love, no more freedom, no more nothing. Can't even serve her own Elohim, you know. But where did this wave take her, and why? Can you imagine, sitting there waiting for a year? What all could be going on inside of you? Yeah, going to be violated. Hey, I don't even know if you've seen the dude, This isn't even like an arranged marriage per se. I mean, it kind of is, but at least in an arranged marriage, you might know something. But anyway, that whole wave took her to be second in command. I got to use that term loosely because the Persians thought about it different, but she became the queen. And just like Joseph, when... Wait, I messed up. I had it written incorrectly. I apologize. It took her to second in command, and just like Joseph, she was sent by Yahweh for a great escape and to preserve her people. Remember what Joseph said whenever he said this. This was over in Genesis 45, 7 and 8. You don't turn that, I'll read it. And Elohim sent me before you to preserve you for a remnant in the earth and to give life to you by great escape. So then, you did not send me here, but Elohim. Esther had to realize that whenever it came time to, she could either sit there and try to be quiet or let her entire people be massacred, including the only family she had left on the earth. And instead of being depressed and hiding from it, she kissed the wave, she stand up, and Yahweh used her to save a great many people. All right? That is kissing the wave. Now, kiss the wave is a journey. To be able to look those obstacles in the face and to be able to move with them and to be able to embrace them, it's a journey. It's not an instantaneous thing. And the reason why it's a journey is because, like we said, you can bump into something and open up an old wound. Something can resurface that can cause us to be hurt. And you have to make this choice every day to allow it to be a blessing as opposed to a cursing. And it's a hard thing to say, especially when you're in the middle of pain. But it can grow you into a better person that Yahweh can use for really great things. And that's something that you have to choose on a day-to-day basis in order to continue to be content. Now, I want to give you one more story about kissing the wave that I learned from a very strange place. It's a great place, though. It's a virtual Sabbath school called Trained Up in Torah. Now, I got to give a little plug to that. My little sister Kaylee's been working on this, and we've got contributors all over the United States. We've even got a girl that it doesn't sound like she's from the United States that has been contributing. She's from Australia, and it's real fun to listen to her. But if you haven't checked it out, go to YouTube, and you can type up Trained Up in Torah, and you can find the YouTubes there. We've got 3 episodes thus far. You can go to Facebook, do the same thing. You can go to Rumble, you can do the same thing. I mean, just type it in. I'm sure you'll be able to find it, and you'll be excited about it. It is great for all ages. I mean, like, you can have, my kids are 8 and 7. It's really hard because my 8's about to be 9. But we got 8 and 7. They enjoy it, and I'm enjoying it sitting there watching it with them. So go check it out. But while this was going on in one of the previous episodes, there was a story that I'd never heard of before about the Braille System. Do y'all know what the Braille System is? Everybody's shaking their head. Well, I kind of knew what it was, but I didn't know what it was. All right? The Braille System is it's not really an alphabet. It's almost like a code of raised bumps that was designed for people that are, they call it sensory impaired, and I don't know why they don't just say blind, but people that can't see to be able to read. And it was designed by somebody that was riding a pretty substantial wave. His name was Louis Braille, right? Louis Braille was not born blind. He was not. He didn't become blind until he was 3 years old. See, his daddy was a craftsman. He worked with leather and did all kinds of things. And one day, his daddy was out there, and Louis was allowed to come out into the shop, and Louis's dad got asked to go outside with a customer. And Louis thought, I'm going to work like daddy. So he walked over there, and he picked up a tool, and he started doing something with it, and walked back and popped him in the eye, and it cut his eye. This is in the early 1800s. Well, they tried to go and get a doctor on it, and by the time they got there, infection had already set up in it, and the eye was dead. Then it spread to the other eye, and it killed the other eye. So at 3 years old, little Louis just got pushed in a direction that he wasn't expecting. Now, the story goes, and it talks a whole lot about Louis and the things that he did, but something that I noticed in the book is that it also talked about how that wave hit the dad, all right? Because the trajectory of dad's life just got changed dramatically. And so he had a couple of things he could do. He'd get all mad and start and let it become bitter. He'd become depressed and start drinking like crazy. And the next thing you know, he's not doing what he's supposed to and stinking it up as a dad. But instead, what Louis's dad did was he said, I will overcome with this. I will evaluate this. I will become and make a better way for this and help my son to be able to cope with this. He really did. So, before I go down that too far, could you imagine what that would feel like as a parent? I mean, to realize, and this is in the 1800s. They don't even have what we have today. This is in the 1800s thinking about, what am I going to do for my kid? Could you imagine feeling how responsible that is? I didn't think about that, y'all. I had an opportunity to feel responsible for a hurt on my son that I still deal with today. Sorry about that. I didn't think about that. But can you imagine what that wave would be like? To know that it was all because you left something unattended, that your son will never have sight ever again. So one of the things that he started doing was, I got to figure out how to help him walk. He's the first person to come up with one of those canes that he could sit there and tap to make sure he didn't run into things. He helped his son be able to get around via that. They taught him how to eat. They taught him how to dress himself without being able to see. He taught him how to count his steps so that he could walk places and remember how many steps it takes to get back while tapping. This is dad thinking about, how can I help my son? This is letting that wave push you into becoming a better person. He made sure that there was a preacher in town. Well, when the preacher moved to town, he made sure that that preacher came over and started reading Louis the scriptures, because that was something that was very important in their family. And it just turns out that Louis was really good at remembering things. He could absorb it and sit there and come out with it. He taught him how to read. The way that he taught him how to read was he was a craftsman. So what he did was, and he was also in the leatherworking, he would get a board out and he would take these little round nails and tap them into the shapes of what the letters were so that Louis could feel what an R feels like and what an S feels like. And he taught him how to put it together and to be able to make words with it. And that same technology, if you could call it that, started being used in a different way in order for blind people to be able to read. They would use it in books and have raised things in the book so that they could read the letters. But these books were like big and heavy and they couldn't do anything with it. And it was hard for little kids to be able to read with this. It was hard for big kids to be able to read with it because of how thick it had to be able to get all those bumps on there. So Louis decided he would figure out a different way, and that's how he came up with the Braille System. The Braille System took the entire alphabet and turned it into a combination of 6 dots. In addition to it being 6 dots, it also had the ability to put numbers into those 6 dots so they could read and do math on it at the same time. All right? That wave for Louis' dad pushed Louis to be positive because Louis' dad could have swole up, he could have gotten negative, he could have gotten bitter, but instead he kissed the wave. He kissed the wave, and then he taught Louis to kiss the wave. Louis went on to go to a very good school that was for hearing impaired and seeing impaired, and he was able to construct this. He called it his code, is what he called it. And it changed the lives of people, and is still used today. That's 2 centuries later. Has anybody ever heard of Helen Keller? Helen Keller was both blind and deaf. She had this to say about how Louis had changed her life. He had an Elohim-like courage and a heart of gold, and he built a large, firm stairway for millions of sense-crippled human beings to climb from hopeless darkness to the mind eternal. And I assume that mind eternal, this is my assumption, I assume that was talking about the scriptures because it's capitalized in the quote. Could you imagine not being able to read about Yahweh anymore? Well, what if you could see but you couldn't hear? Or what if you couldn't do either one of them? How would you know about Yahweh and being able to know how important you are and how he loves you and how to serve him? Louis kissing that wave made that possible for all kinds of people. Had Louis' dad not kissed the wave, he would not have taught Louis to also kiss the wave and make a difference that is still impacting the world 200 years later. Remember, there's 3 ways to be able to take the wave on, to deal with the wave. You can get hurt and do nothing and get depressed. You can get hurt and fight back, and that leads to bitterness. Blaming, it can include blaming Yahweh. Or you can get hurt, learn from it, and let you grow into something that can be closer to Yahweh and be used for his purpose. Learn from the wave. Learn from the wave. Grow with the wave. Let Yahweh push you into whatever it is that he wants you to do. Let it bring you to the rock of salvation. Realize, like Joseph did, that even if Hashatan is the one that's in control of the wave, Yahweh can control the destination. And through that growth, you can make a difference in the world that can last for centuries, even after you. Kiss the wave. Yivrekeka Yahweh va'ishmereka. Ya'ir Yahweh panavaleka v'kineka. Yisai Yahweh panavaleka v'yasimach shalom. Yahweh bless you and guard you. Yahweh make his face to shine upon you and show favor to you. Yahweh lift up his face upon you and give you perfect and complete peace.
Hey, hey, and he can make a way. Hey, hey, so humble yourselves and pray and guard his Torah. Obey each day. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.